Imagine for a moment a small, peaceful town. Okay. It's wrapped in that quiet anticipation of Christmas, just days before the holiday. The air is sharp with winter, maybe, a hint of pine. And in this modest ground floor apartment, there's a school teacher, really dedicated, carefully arranging colorful paper, ribbons, tape, lovingly wrapping presents for her third graders, picturing their faces. Now, hold that image and then just shatter it. Shift abruptly to one of, well, unspeakable violence, a brutal crime that would utterly destroy that peace, leaving a whole community reeling, searching for answers. Answers that wouldn't come for more than 2 decades.
It's a jarring contrast, isn't it?
It really is. That's the reality at the heart of the Christy Mirack case, a murder back in 1992, Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And what makes this one really haunting is that there was physical evidence at the scene. Clear, undeniable evidence. Yet despite that, for 26 long years, the killer walked free, completely undetected. So how does a case like this, one that seems lost to time, suddenly just roar back to life? That's what this deep dive is all about. Exploring exactly that, how these cold cases, these frustrating, often just heartbreaking mysteries, how they can be cracked open, how they're brought to justice through this remarkable blend of, well, sheer persistence and profound scientific breakthroughs.
And that, for me, is precisely why Christy Mirack's story is so compelling and, frankly, so important to explore. The journey of a cold case, it's almost always an exercise in deep frustration, not just for law enforcement, obviously, but for the victim's family. They carry that burden, that uncertainty, that unresolved grief for years, sometimes generations.
Yeah, decades.
Exactly. But the Mirack case really stands as a testament. It highlights the extraordinary power, the evolving power of forensic science, and maybe just as importantly, the relentless, often thankless persistence of investigators who just refuse to give up, even when every lead seemed to, just vanish into thin air.
You're absolutely right. And our deep dive today, it's meticulously built around these powerful excerpts from a really remarkable source. The Long Pursuit of Christy Mirack's Killer. This account, it's not just a timeline, right? It's a gripping narrative of how justice, against what seemed like impossible odds, finally arrived. So our mission, for you listening, is to pull out the most important nuggets of knowledge, the key insights from this material. We're going to trace the harrowing story of Christy's murder, the decades-long investigation that followed, and then the eventual, just stunning unmasking of her killer through really cutting-edge technology. So get ready, because what you're about to explore reveals how these seemingly small, maybe overlooked details, combined with incredible scientific advances, can finally bring closure. Accountability. After decades of silence, it's a journey that really shows you the enduring power of hope, even when things seem utterly desperate.
It really does.
So, to really get the impact of this crime, we need to understand the life that was taken. Let's go back to December 1992, just 4 days before Christmas. Our story centers on Christy Mirack, a vibrant, promising young woman, her life just blossoming. She was only 25, a beloved third-grade teacher at Rollstown Elementary, a job she approached with, well, genuine passion, dedication.
You get that sense very clearly from the source.
Absolutely. People who knew her spoke of her with immense warmth, affection, known for her kindness, her commitment to her students, and this radiant smile that, as the source puts it, genuinely made even the shyest child feel seen and special. She wasn't just a teacher, she was like a light in her community.
And it's so crucial to grasp the context of her life then, because it paints such a stark contrast to what happened next. Christy lives alone. Modest ground floor apartment, Greenfield Estates complex in Lancaster. And by all accounts, this was the epitome of a quiet, safe, close-knit neighborhood.
Yeah.
The kind of place where people felt so secure that, and the source notes this specifically, doors were often left unlocked. And that detail, seemingly small, becomes incredibly poignant, doesn't it? Because it sets up the shocking rupture of peace, of security that was about to happen. It wasn't just a crime, it felt like an invasion of a sanctuary. A violation of that assumed safety.
And right before that horrific Monday, there was this perfectly normal, almost idyllic Sunday, December 20th, 1992. Christy spent her evening doing something so many of us do around the holidays, wrapping Christmas presents. But these weren't just for family or friends, they were for her students. You can almost picture it, right? Her living room, vibrant, cheerful, full of the season's spirit. Colorful paper, ribbons, and tape littered her living room floor.
Right.
It's such an ordinary detail, but it's heartbreakingly poignant because, as the source tragically points out, these were gifts she never got the chance to deliver. They just remained there. A silent, colorful testament to a life full of plans that were just erased.
Those kinds of everyday domestic details are incredibly powerful, aren't they? They really humanize the victim in a way statistics never ever could. They remind us this wasn't just a case file number. It was a real person, a real life, full of plans, hopes, intentions for the very next day. Thinking about those quiet moments, the gifts, the simple routine, it just amplifies the horror because it wasn't just a life taken, but a future and all the small, ordinary joys and responsibilities that went with it. It makes the loss feel so much more profound, so immediate.
Yeah, that Sunday peace, that quiet anticipation,
Yeah.
shattered brutally. The very next day, Monday, December 21st, 1992, final week before Christmas break, usually a time of excitement for kids, right? It started like a typical school morning for Christy. Around 6:45 a.m., she made a quick call to a close friend. The conversation, the source says, was brief. She sounded rushed but cheerful. You know that kind of call. Gotta go, busy day ahead.
Yeah, exactly. She was likely right in the middle of her morning routine, getting ready for school, probably between 7:10 a.m., and those Christmas presents she'd wrapped, still neatly stacked in her living room when the police got there later. A chilling, silent marker of a normal day violently interrupted.
And then
Yeah.
Then came the detail that investigators would pore over for, well, decades. Around 7:10 to 7:20 a.m., a neighbor, just going about their own morning, reported hearing a sudden, sharp, high-pitched scream. It lasted, chillingly, only a moment, then silence.
Just a moment.
Yeah, and here's where it gets incredibly unsettling. Investigators now firmly believe this brief, terrifying sound. That was the precise moment the killer struck. And crucially, a detail that baffled them for years, no signs of forced entry, none, which suggests a very specific, frightening scenario. Either Christy, kind, trusting, let him in, maybe she knew him, or he caught her just as she was leaving her apartment, right there at the door.
And the implications of that no forced entry detail, well, they were absolutely significant for the investigators right from the start. It immediately shifted the focus, didn't it? Away from maybe a random break-in to something far more personal, or at least planned. If she let him in willingly, it suggests familiarity, maybe trust, maybe even manipulation by the killer. If he caught her as she was leaving, that implies a planned ambush, right? A predatory waiting game. Both scenarios create a very different profile than forced entry. It narrowed their initial scope, directed them away from thinking it was just an opportunistic burglar. It was a key piece shaping that early pursuit.
And what followed that scream? It was described as just a frenzied, brutal attack. Christy was beaten, strangled, and sexually assaulted. The apartment itself, just hours before a cozy space filled with holiday cheer, now told this horrific story of struggle, extreme violence. Furniture was overturned, Christmas wrapping paper crumpled beneath frantic footsteps. It paints a picture, and there's a specific chilling detail from the source that really sticks with you. A wooden cutting board, later determined to have been used in the attack, was left on her back. Just speaks volumes about the ferocity, the desperation of that struggle.
The crime scene itself spoke volumes, didn't it? About the rage, the violence involved, the extensive disarray, the severe nature of Christie's injuries using a household item as a weapon. These were all grim indicators that the investigators would have meticulously documented every piece of evidence from the disturbed furniture to the specific injuries, helped them build a picture. They weren't just trying to figure out what happened, but how it happened, why it unfolded with such awful brutality.
The discovery, just a few short hours later, was absolutely devastating. By 8:45 a.m., Christy hadn't shown up at school. And this was completely unlike her. The source emphasizes she was punctual to the minute, super reliable. Her principal, understandably worried by this uncharacteristic absence, tried calling. No answer. So, just after 9 a.m., concern growing, he drove straight to her apartment. And what he found there? A scene that would haunt him forever, a moment that kicked off one of the longest cold case investigations in Pennsylvania history. He found the door slightly ajar, and inside, on the living room floor, lay Christy face down, her clothing torn, her body battered. You can only begin to imagine the horror, the shock. For him, for everyone who knew her, realizing the terrible truth, that principal's concern, his quick action, absolutely crucial. It brought the police immediately to the scene of this just unspeakable tragedy.
Absolutely critical first step.
So when the police arrived that morning, they secured the area immediately, starting what would become this 26-year journey. This meant meticulously collecting everything. Uniformed officers, crime scene techs, gathering crucial semen samples, carefully lifting fingerprints from surfaces all over the apartment, photographing everything, multiple angles. They were thorough, following the best protocols they had back then, determined to capture every single potential clue.
Indeed, and it's vital to recognize that. The standard protocols back in the early 90s, okay, they weren't as technologically advanced as today, obviously, But they still place immense emphasis on meticulous collection, preservation. Every item, every trace, no matter how small it seemed then, was treated as potentially crucial. Without that initial painstaking work, the careful bagging, labeling, storing of evidence there would have been nothing. Absolutely nothing for future forensic scientists to revisit decades later. The foresight and dedication of those original officers really laid the foundation for what came later.
Right, and this brings us to the core dilemma they faced immediately back in 1992. The DNA evidence. The source states the DNA profile they got from the semen samples was clear. It was there. A biological signature of the killer. Undeniable. But, and this is the absolute crux of it, in 1992, there was no match in any national database. The stark reality was the technology, the infrastructure, it just wasn't there yet. They had the killer's biological identity, essentially, but no way, absolutely no way to connect that profile to a name, to a person walking around.
And this is where understanding the evolution of DNA forensics is so fascinating, isn't it? In 1992, DNA profiling itself was groundbreaking, sure. But the idea of a comprehensive national DNA database like CODIS, the Combined DNA Index System, was still very much in its infancy.
Right, CODIS came later.
Exactly. CODIS, as we think of it now, only officially launched its national database in 1998. That's 6 years after Christie's murder. Before that, databases were mostly local, much smaller, mainly holding DNA from known offenders or maybe other crime scenes. What they absolutely did not have back then was this vast network we see today, from consumer ancestry sites like Ancestry.com or 23andMe, where people voluntarily submit profiles.
That's a huge difference.
Huge. So in 92, having a clear DNA profile didn't automatically point to a suspect because there was no widespread pool to compare it against. It really highlights the patience required, the scientific foresight to preserve that evidence. They had to wait for technology to catch up, to bridge that gap between the sample and an actual person. They literally had the key, but the lock, effectively, hadn't been invented yet.
Wow. So despite having what the source calls a wealth of physical evidence, clear DNA, fingerprints, the neighbor's testimony about the scream no suspect, just imagine that immense frustration for the police and the crushing despair for Christie's family. For years, the investigation just churned on. Detectives, old ones, new ones, doing everything they could, chasing down every lead, however small, re-interviewing witnesses, hoping for a new detail, continually running the DNA through every new system that came online over the years, always hoping, but still, year after year after year, nothing. The file on Christie's murder just got thicker, and each Christmas passed a grim, poignant reminder for her family, enduring the season with that hollow space where Christie should have been, living with that agonizing uncertainty. Who did this? They held on to hope, but the silence must have been deafening.
It's truly almost impossible to fully grasp that weight, isn't it? The weight of a cold case. Not just for the officers pouring their lives into it, carrying these unsolved mysteries, feeling the family's pain, but profoundly for that family to live for 26 years with unanswered questions, knowing the killer was out there, maybe nearby, and that constant searing pain of loss, compounded by injustice. It's a burden most of us can barely comprehend. The human cost is immeasurable, and it makes the eventual breakthrough, in this case, all the more poignant, all the more impactful.
Yeah. Which brings us to the dawn of this truly new era in forensic science. 25 years after Christie's murder, after decades of silence, the breakthrough finally arrived. 2017. And this is where the story gets incredibly compelling, because technology took this monumental leap forward, one that would just redefine cold case investigations, the game changer. A company called Parabon Nanolabs, described in our source as experts in genetic genealogy.
Yes, and their method was truly groundbreaking. It moved beyond just traditional DNA matching to something far more complex, more predictive. They took Christie's long-preserved DNA evidence, that same sample collected back in '92, and used it to generate something really uncanny. A composite image of her killer.
A picture from DNA.
Essentially, yes. Not a generic sketch from eyewitnesses, but a face predicted from the biological material itself. They created two distinct images. One as he might have looked at 25 around the time of the murder, and again as he might appear at 50, decades later. And the course really captured the feeling of this moment, describing it as unsettling to see a face generated from crime scene DNA staring back from the press release.
I can only imagine that feeling. Decades of knowing nothing, and suddenly there's a face, derived from the crime scene itself, appearing years later. Must have felt like science fiction. But how does that actually work? How can DNA, these tiny markers, generate a face? What kind of genetic info allows that? How accurate can it even be?
That's a fantastic question because, yeah, it sounds almost like magic, but it's science. It's called DNA phenotyping. What Barabon does is analyze specific genetic markers, they're called SNPs, single nucleotide polymorphisms within the DNA sample. And these particular SNPs are known to be highly correlated with physical traits you can see on the outside.
Like eye color.
Exactly. They can predict things like hair color, eye color, skin tone, whether someone has freckles, even general facial structure like nose shape or face width. Now, it's not a perfect photograph, right? It generates a statistically probable composite. So if the DNA shows a high probability for, say, blue eyes and blonde hair, the image will reflect that. Accuracy varies by trait. Predicting eye color is often more accurate than predicting, say, exact chin shape. But combined, these predictions provide a remarkable investigative lead. It gives a potential appearance for a suspect who's been faceless for years, a powerful tool when traditional methods have just hit a wall. It gives investigators a visual starting point where there was absolutely none before.
Incredible. And it worked. Beyond just the composite image, the painstaking genealogical analysis by Parabon, starting in 2017, by May 2018, incredibly, it narrowed the search down even further. To one single man, the source reveals his name, Raymond DJ Freese-Rowe. And here's the truly chilling irony, the kind of detail that just makes you look twice at everyone. He was a well-known local wedding and club DJ.
Hiding in plain sight.
Exactly. Not some shadowy figure on the fringes. A visible, active, even popular part of the community. Someone who had lived in the area for decades, hiding in plain sight, entertaining crowds while harboring a secret.
It's an unsettling truth, isn't it? That sometimes the most horrific acts are committed by people who seem utterly ordinary, even beloved. The shock of realizing a seemingly harmless popular figure could be capable of such violence. It sends these profound ripples of disbelief, betrayal through a whole town. It challenges our basic assumptions about who criminals are, where they lurk, reminds us that evil can wear a very convincing disguise, often hiding right there, living a seemingly normal, even productive life for decades. That aspect really hit Lancaster hard.
So the genetic genealogy pointed investigators straight to Raymond Rowe, an incredibly strong lead. But as powerful as this new science was, police needed definitive proof, irrefutable proof. To connect Rowe directly to that 1992 crime, beyond any reasonable doubt, they needed a fresh DNA sample, one collected specifically for this, directly linked to him. And this is where the meticulous planning, the precision of modern policing really comes into play. The source describes this precise sting operation. May 31st, 2018, Rowe's performing at a school event. Completely unaware he's under intense, continuous observation, undercover officers.
It's a classic technique, really, but highly effective. Requires immense patience, precise execution. Undercover officers watched him closely, waiting for that perfect, legally permissible moment to get a discarded DNA sample without him knowing. That's critical for it to be admissible in court, you see. They couldn't just demand a sample without probable cause for arrest. They needed something he willingly abandoned.
And the crucial moment arrived, described almost mundanely, but carrying such immense weight. It says he drank from a water bottle and chewed gum, then discarded them. Just think about that. The simplicity, yet the absolute brilliance and meticulous planning behind collecting it. Almost boring, right? But that bottle, that gum, that was the linchpin, the final piece.
Right. And the legality and precision here are paramount. Officers have to ensure the items are genuinely discarded, that no privacy rights are violated. But once something is truly abandoned, like a water bottle tossed in a public trash can or gum left on a table, the DNA on it is fair game. This discarded DNA method has become an incredibly critical tool in modern investigations. It offers a non-intrusive way to link suspects, yet it's irrefutable. It effectively bypasses the need for warrants or direct requests for DNA, making it incredibly powerful, often decisive in getting that confirmatory evidence. It's a real testament to how clever, how resourceful investigators can be within legal boundaries.
And the results, they were almost immediate, providing the certainty that had eluded everyone for 26 years. The collected items, that water bottle, the gum sent straight to the lab. And in the lab, the outcome was undeniable, swift, utterly conclusive. The results were clear. A perfect, unassailable DNA match. To the semen found on Christy's body back in 1992, after 26 years of silence, uncertainty, persistent searching, the cold case had definitively identified its killer. For Christy's family, for the tireless investigators, it must have been a feeling of just profound finality, triumph, a release of decades of waiting, frustration, unanswered prayers.
A moment they'd waited so long for.
Absolutely. And with that DNA match confirmed, the final act in this decades-long drama unfolded quickly.
A long cold case has come to an end with the suspect's guilty plea for a murder committed back in 1992. Raymond Rowe is a DJ in Pennsylvania. In court yesterday, he admitted to sexually assaulting and killing elementary school teacher Christy Mirack 27 years ago. Prosecutors broke the case by linking DNA found at the crime scene to Rowe's relatives. Rowe was sentenced to life in prison without parole.
June 25, 2018. Just weeks after the confirmation, SWAT officers surrounded Raymond Rowe's home. His arrest sent shockwaves through Lancaster, a complete, devastating unraveling of the deception he'd maintained for so long, a public unmasking. The source really captures the essence of this revelation for the community. The friendly DJ with the easy smile was unmasked as a cold-blooded killer. The sheer cognitive dissonance, it must have been immense.
It really does raise that unsettling question, doesn't it? The psychological aspect of someone like Rowe living a double life for so long. To maintain that public persona, beloved entertainer, bringing joy to events while harboring this horrific secret, it speaks to a profound disconnect, or maybe just a ruthlessly maintained facade. And for a community, the revelation that a seemingly ordinary, even respected member was capable of such profound violence, it has a lasting impact. It shatters trust, forces this uncomfortable reevaluation of who people really are, leaves a lingering sense of betrayal. It's a sobering reminder that appearances, however convincing, can be deeply deceiving.
Yeah. So facing that overwhelming, irrefutable evidence, the genetic genealogy, the direct DNA match, likely a mountain of other corroborating details gathered over decades, Raymond Rowe had no defense, no viable defense, options gone. In June 2019, he pleaded guilty. First-degree murder, rape, sexual assault. The legal system, after all that time, finally delivered a concrete verdict.
And the sentence reflected the extreme gravity, the brutality of his crimes. Life in prison without parole, plus 60 to 120 years. It ensured beyond any doubt he would never walk free again, never pose a threat, never hide in plain sight again, a definitive end to his reign of terror and deception.
And for Christy's family, after 26 excruciating years of grief, uncertainty, longing, they finally had answers. Now, no conviction, no matter how just, can ever bring back their loved one or erase that pain. We know that. But it can provide a measure of peace, maybe. A sense of vindication, that invaluable closure that comes from knowing the truth, seeing justice served. The powerful statement from her brother in court really captures the depth of their enduring pain, his desire for accountability. I hope you never sleep peacefully again. It's bittersweet, isn't it? Answers finally arrive, but the profound loss, the stolen future, that remains etched into their lives forever. For us listening, it really underlines the immense importance of justice, even decades later. For the healing process, it's not just about punishment, it's about validating their pain, acknowledging their loved one, holding the person responsible accountable.
Absolutely. And the conclusion drawn by the source, it encapsulates the entire journey of this case so precisely. For 26 years, Christy Mirack's voice was silent. But science, persistence, and the community's refusal to forget spoke for her. And in the end, the truth caught up to Raymond Rowe. This outcome wasn't just about one scientific breakthrough, however revolutionary it was. It was a synergy, right? The tireless dedication of generations of investigators, the scientific innovation providing new tools, the sheer tenacity to keep the case active for decades, and the enduring memory of the victim, kept alive by loved ones and those sworn to protect. It's a profound demonstration of human determination meeting technological progress.
What an incredible, heartbreaking, yet ultimately, hopeful story this has been. As we wrap up this deep dive, let's just quickly reiterate the core themes that emerged so powerfully from the Christy Mirack case. First, the profound, long-lasting impact of cold cases, not just on investigators, but on entire families, entire communities, living with those unanswered questions for decades. Second, the extraordinary, almost science fiction evolution of forensic science, especially genetic genealogy, DNA phenotyping, literally giving voice to silent evidence, allowing the past to speak. And finally, the relentless, unwavering persistence required to bring justice, sometimes decades later, showcasing the sheer human will involved in these tough pursuits.
We really uncovered some remarkable insights, surprising facts here, didn't we? That stark contrast, having clear DNA in 92 but no database match, versus the precision of genetic genealogy generating composite images decades later. That's a monumental leap.
Huge leap.
And of course, the elegant, almost deceptively simple undercover collection of DNA from a water bottle and gum in 2018. That's clever police work meeting scientific opportunity. This case fundamentally changes how we think about unsolvable crimes.
So what does this all mean for us, for the bigger picture of justice, for countless other cold cases out there?
Well, If we connect this to the broader implications globally, I think it's a message of profound, enduring hope. Basically, no case is ever truly cold if the physical evidence is meticulously preserved and if technology keeps marching forward like it is. The Mirack case just underscores that point with incredible clarity. It also highlights how investigative work itself continues to evolve, where patience truly is a virtue, and where the long-game persistence plus innovation can unlock even the most stubborn secrets. It's a powerful reminder that justice, though sometimes delayed, can ultimately be found.
Absolutely. So as you go about your day, maybe consider how the echoes of a past crime, seemingly faded, can ripple for decades until science finally catches up. And perhaps what other seemingly unsolvable mysteries might be just one technological leap away or one determined investigator away from a definitive resolution. It's a powerful and actually quite hopeful thought to ponder, isn't it?